Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Got Sandra Marks. And my mother joining us. So they're joining us now. Um, got a couple people that are on the live now as well. So we're just, Sandra,
Yeah.
yeah, we're live on Facebook, Sandra.
Come on, we're live on Facebook.
Oh, we are?
Yeah.
Hi.
Everybody,
Nationwide.
that is my mother.
Okay, come on. Stick your head in. This is Arthur's mom. Bend down. Yes, they see you. Yeah, that's Arthur's mom.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So,
yeah, we're going to be here.
Yeah, Gwen is trying to get in. Let me send her the link.
Okay,
The link was wrong.
You want to go downstairs and sit down? It's easier to be at the table. Well, you're going on too long. You'd be shocked what I'm doing yesterday. Not here. Go up and down the steps multiple times. I can go more than once now. Go as much as I want.
Okay.
He'll say that. You say that.
He did. I mean, when you say this, like, did I go up more than once? You're like, yeah.
Had to mute Sandra Marks. Can't take her anywhere. So we're waiting for our Gwen to call in. As we're waiting, just let me recap. This has been a wonderful, wonderful challenge. It was my first challenge ever. Started off kind of nervous, but it went extremely well. And I believe that it is going to be the first of many challenges. So, hold on, hold on a second. Nine two two seven three. 1 second. 6 9 2 2. Okay. So it's just now 6 o'clock. So we're just now about to start. We should have our guests with us shortly. Listen, while we're waiting for this, if you were a part of the challenge, I want you to do me a favor, and I want you to send me. And it'd be nice to send me a live, but send me a live or something letting you know what you got out of the challenge. And now we are joined by our honored guests. We have Gwen Wayne and Kevin Scribner. Can you all hear me?
We can. Hello.
Okay.
How are you today?
Finding you. We got Sandra Marks. She's on the. She's stepped away from her camera, but we're also streaming this live to Facebook.
Okay.
And so we have people that are watching it on Facebook as well. And the way my group has worked is it was a challenge. And so some of them, they'll watch it live, others will watch it later on and comment on it. So I'll share that information with you as well. But what I did, Gwen, I did Gwen, that's Sandra Marks and Clementine Porter.
Well, hello, Gwen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Hey, I'm Queen.
You're looking forward to your session.
Yeah.
You look lovely. You look lovely, my dear.
Well, thank you. Y'all look beautiful too. Them home jeans, you can't beat them.
I know that's true. All right.
Okay, so the way the challenge worked is each day that the whole goal of the challenge was it was called the Coming Out Stronger Challenge.
Okay.
And the whole premise was that we did not choose how we came into COVID. It just happened upon us, but we could definitely choose how we come out.
Right.
And so we decided that we were going to come out victorious, informed, and dangerous. So victorious was us just getting the right mindset around having control of the situation. Informed was all the speakers I had to come in to talk about finances and entrepreneurship and writing books and all kinds of stuff that had people come in and talk about. And the dangerous is now that we have all this information, that we get it out of us, out into the public, and that we begin to really impact the community. So I wanted to end it, Gwen, with your piece, which is the grief recovery, because a lot of people may have lost family, may have lost jobs, may have lost spouses, may have lost opportunities, may have even lost hope. But I knew that you had a ministry that was tried by fire, that you
Yes.
were able to come on here and share with the people some common steps to kind of get through grief. And then I also want at the very end, Gwen, I want you, because I told them all, I said that this is a powerful woman of God who can really exhort. And I want her to end it all with a powerful covering prayer as we go out now to be uh, victorious, informed, and dangerous. So if you would, Gwen, if you could kind of start, and as well as Mr. Scribner, to talk about what is your grief ministry and how it got started.
Well, in 2015, I lost the love of my life. And I really don't like to say lost because I know where he is. But my husband passed, and I could not function, if you will. And so after being married for 32 years, this was a whole different way of life for me. And it was almost, paralyzing. And so I had to make peace with what had happened. And then God gave me the revelation that on this journey, we will always be grieving. No matter what, we're going to grieve. And so there's a way for us to grieve, there's a different way for us to grieve. And so we won't get over death, but what God does is he will give us the grace to live with the pain. Mm-hmm. And so that's where it's come from. I don't want to go too much further without introducing my partner in the grief relief organization. And so I'll just let him introduce himself.
Okay, and so I'm Kevin Scribner, and in 2007, my daughter was killed in a car accident. Just finished up a Yale interview, and so she was on her way home, and so valedictorian of her class. I was a father of 4 children, raising 2 girls, 2 boys. I was single at the time, and so her death really just impacted me. And the more I went through life, the more challenging this grief thing really became. But then I realized that in my grief, I actually was more beneficial to others experiencing it. So I actually took my pain, as did Gwen, and we came up with grief relief organization to help those who are gripped or paralyzed by the pain associated with death.
And we're also ministers, and Kevin is my cousin through my husband. Yes. And so anyway, and so he's also a licensed counselor as well. And so although we have, we're relative through the pain, we're also, it's nothing like going through it for yourself. So, we can tell people, I don't know how you feel, and I can only imagine, but it's something when you have to walk that grief journey by yourself. And right. So our mission is, amidst sorrow and pain, is the one constant that links us all together when we've experienced the loss of a loved one. And we've all grieved, or we will grieve. Therefore, it's the mission of grief relief to offer continuing care throughout our journey. And on this journey, we're going to all, listen, if you have not had someone close to you pass, keep on living. Mm-hmm. Because you will. And so our thing is, we want to show you that there is a different way to grieve. And, in the church, they teach us what? To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And that is true. But guess what? When someone passed, don't tell me no scripture, because I can't hear you.
Right.
And so I don't care how intelligent you are, your heart just does not make that connection.
Right.
So anyway, I'll just start by saying grief is normal, it's the expected reaction to loss. But we have to keep in mind that you don't get over grief. You have to reconcile yourself to it and adjust to the loss. And it's not really a new normal, it's just a new way of living. Right. And so you also have to know that time does not heal, but time spent healing will heal your loss. And so it's going to be a constant job that we have to work at daily. So coping through the feelings of depression and sadness can become overwhelming, and you may need help of a professional counselor. And this is the part where I really want to park right here for a moment, because we in our community don't often seek mental help. Right. But guess what? on this journey, you're gonna need some help. And so, you know, we've heard you crazy if you go to a therapist. Well, I submit that you crazy if you don't. You know, I mean, because we need some help on this journey. And
Right.
so Kevin.
Yeah, and so on my journey, I was actually in grief therapy for 2.5 years, and so and like Gwen said, I mean, you're crazy if you don't go, but you know, there's a stigma among our race, you know, hey, that's not something that we do. Therapy is taboo. We can't do this, and so you know, we just want to make sure that we walk alongside and anybody who's going through this type of situation. And so my thing is, if you're continuing to struggle with the ongoing feelings of grief, we're here to help. And most of the time, you know, when we say we're here to help, you know, you can say that, hey, we have these ministries at the church, they're here to help. I know from my own personal experience, you know, we supposedly had a ministry, but it was nowhere to be found. And so it was actually my neighbors, probably 2 months in, they all brought dinner to me, and it took me back to where I was when I was in grief therapy. The counselor asked me, what are you going to do when the last casserole comes? And I never thought about what would I do. All the fanfare is gone. Everything is back to business as usual for everybody else, but grief is only personal to those who are experiencing it. And so, you know, so that's why when we say we're here to help, we're really here to help. Our philosophy is it's ministry over money, but you know, hey, this is our ministry, and so we avail ourselves on this grief journey, and we will provide the needed support through all the critical steps in the healing process. And then also remember that, you know, people have to actively participate through the grieving process. It's grief work, and I know for me personally, I got tired of the counselor saying, "Hey, this is grief work. Do your grief work," and I'm like, "Hey, I'm coming here for healing." I didn't know I was going to have a homework assignment. And then you're telling me to do grief work. I just want to get this hurt and this pain off of me. But then the grief work was actually processing. And so we don't know how to process and how to manage the very thing that we're in. And so, and processing it will help us reduce the intensity and the frequency of the pain. And so grief counseling, you know, you will always have to work at that process when you're coping with death.
And so, so this brings us to, there are stages of grief, if you will. And so there are 5 stages of grief. And so I'll start and Kevin and I will kind of alternate. And so the first stage is denial. And it's really normal. You know how when you get the news that someone has passed and you say, I just really can't believe it, you know, and then you start going through the things of what would you have said to them? And, you know, and I wish I had spent more time with them. And it's really this defense mechanism that buffers the immediate shock of the loss. You know, I just can't believe it. Now, listen, intellectually, we know that they're gone. But like I said before, the heart does not make the connection. And so if you know, when you experience denial, it's a normal state of being. Mm-hmm. And so it's really not crazy.
Right. And then the next one is anger, and that's that numbing effect of the denial stage. And it begins to just wear on you. And so, you know, for me, I didn't really become angry. Mine was more of a disappointment because it's my daughter's valedictorian, and then the doctor comes out and says, hey, we've done all we can. And then, so my first question to God is this it? And so that was the thing that really got me. I'm like, you know, this girl worked hard to get to where she really wanted to be. And then, God, this is it. This is how you put the punctuation on her life. And so, and so that was really numbing in and of itself. And the pain and loss, it takes hold of you, and we start to blame, and then we feel intense guilt, and then we start to lash out at others.
And you know, when you're, if I can piggyback on that for a moment, you know, grief is really disrespectful. And, you know, because if you don't deal with it, it will come out in the wrong way. And so you can find yourself snapping at people, being ugly to folks. And it's really not that you're mad at anybody, you're just angry.
Right.
And you're angry about what happened. And so our next stage is bargaining. And so that's that what if stage, you know, a temporary escape from the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say what if, you know, we'll say stuff like, Lord, if you just send them back.
Right.
If you just change this, knowing that it's not going to change, but we start trying to bargain with God. But how, you know, we can't bargain with God.
Right.
When he speaks, your only answer is amen. You know what I mean? Because his will is going to be done no matter what. And so we have to make peace with that.
Yeah, and then the next stage is depression. This is not your typical mental illness. This is appropriate response to the great transition of your loved one. And then the symptoms are great sadness, decreased sleep, reduced appetite, loss of motivation and desire. And so, you know, we begin to go through and feel all of those different phases during this depression stage.
And then our fifth stage is acceptance.
Mm.
And that's not accepting per se the death. It's just accepting the reality that this is not something we're never going to get over, and this is final. Mm. And you know how you really sinks in that it's final when you start moving out clothes and stuff, and you start realizing that they're not coming back. And so, you know, and it's not just a physical loss. It's also in this COVID environment, people are losing jobs. They're losing loved ones. And then we're losing the normalcy of life as we knew it. Mm-hmm. And will it ever go back to the way it was? And so this is a whole new level of grief. Then also, funerals are not what they used to be. You know, now, can you attend the funeral? And if you do, then you have to wear a mask, and then everybody has to be 6 feet apart. And so you don't even get to have that closure that you used to have, where you could just, you know, have a normal funeral surrounded by all your loved ones. And so grief is a process. We're learning grief on a whole new level. Mm-hmm. Didn't you agree?
Yeah, it has a whole new face. And so a couple of weeks ago, I'm actually driving, and I see the hearse. I see the little motorcycle lead, the hearse, and then a family car. And I'm saying to myself, hey, where's the rest of the procession? And realizing this environment, it's given a whole new face to funerals and a whole new face to grieving. And so, you know, and then you start to wonder, what does it look like, you know, 3 to 4 months from now, particularly if you have someone to die in this environment, and you don't have the proper grief structure and processes in place. And then so you're going to actually end up grieving that death twice, because you're pondering, hey, will anybody show up for a future memorial? And then you're already dealing with the grief in and of itself. And so your mind is constantly in unrest, because you don't know what the next couple of months hold. And so it's taken on a whole new process and a whole new face. And so that's why Gwen and I are adapting ourselves accordingly, because it's not now just the loss and the death of a loved one, but it's of things, you know, jobs, and finances, income, and everything that, you know, people held tangible and dear. We're seeing all of that change right before our very eyes.
We really are. So at this point, Arthur, we'd like to interview each other, if you will.
Go right ahead.
So, yeah. And so we're a little radical and different. And okay. So we'd like to interview each other. So Kevin, my first question for you is, do you find yourself being irritable, annoyed, intolerant, or angry these days in this COVID environment, and, you know, while you're grieving?
Well, you know, as I said, my daughter, her death was in 2007. And so, of course, you can revisit any stage at any given time. And so my thing has been, you know, when you have those anniversary dates, yeah, or things like that, you're trying to deal with that. And then in this current environment, you tend to lose focus on where you are, because you know that you still have this hurt and pain, but then now you have the anxieties associated with COVID, and then of course you have the protests, and then everything else that's going on in the current environment. So we want to make sure that we stay focused on our loved one so that we don't end up killing them twice.
So how do you channel the anger though?
Grief work. You have to do the work because you can find yourself becoming very angry in this environment and saddened through so many other losses and in this environment. So we want to make sure that if we do nothing else, we take the opportunity to breathe.
That's good. That's good.
Okay, so Cuz,
yes,
do you experience an ongoing sense of numbness or being isolated from your own self or from others? And the second part of that question is, or do you usually feel that you have no one to talk to about what's happening?
You know what? I think when Alan passed, I feel like my first initial response was to make sure everybody else is okay. So I think you're numb because you have to be numb.
Right.
Because, you know, everyone's depending on you. And so I don't really feel like I focused on his death until probably maybe a year later, you know what I mean? Because I had to make sure that my children were okay, my grandchildren were okay, and everybody around me. And so I think we do ourselves a disservice though, by putting everyone else's pain ahead of, you know, ahead of our own. And I don't think I ever, you know, have those moments that I don't have anybody to talk to.
Right.
You know, I mean, and God is so amazing. On my grief journey, he wouldn't allow me to grieve because he knows that I commit. And so if I fell in the floor, I was going to be in the floor. And so he starts sending other people to me to minister to. And I'm thinking, well, God, I'm ministering to them while I'm hurting myself. But that's what the grief work is about, because it's not until you go through it that you really realize what other people need. And so I really, you know, so now I'm out of that numb phase. And I really feel like, you know, if you've lost someone, make sure you speak their name. But you know what I mean?
That's right.
And put it in the atmosphere and say it frequently and say it often. Now, one thing that you will experience is it will make people uncomfortable because they're like, oh my gosh, she's talking about him again, or he's talking about her again. And it's because they don't know how to fix your brain.
Right.
And so we've got to teach people how to grieve. And if I don't say their name, then it's like they never lived.
Right.
And so we got to put their name in the atmosphere. Okay, so you ready for your next one?
I am ready.
Okay. Since your daughter has died, are you highly anxious most of the time about your own death or the death of other loved ones? And a second part of that is this beginning to interfere with other relationships and your ability to concentrate or live the way you would like to live?
Well, with my daughter's death, I don't feel myself anxious and anxiety stricken. But I will say in this current environment with the social injustices, the police brutality, and then this pandemic in and of itself, it does, for me as a Black man, make me reassess my own mortality. Because, you know, I could drive down the highway and at any time that could be the end. So I think I'm more anxious with regards to that and anxiety written with that and those two things, the pandemic and the just the social unrest right now than my daughter. And then I think it would do my daughter a disservice if I focused all of that on those two things and not continue to put her name in the atmosphere. Like you said, you have to say their name and put them in the atmosphere so that they continue to live. And so I think that that's where I am with everything.
Okay.
All right. So question for you. Do you feel you're always and continually preoccupied with Alan or his death and certain aspects of it, even though it's been several years after his death?
I don't really like the term preoccupied. I do. I think I do require people to focus on the fact that he did live.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is very important to me that people know his legacy, and that they realize that, you know, God allowed us to have an extraordinary individual in our life. Mm-hmm. And so that's, and in that, probably, I guess it's been, well, it'll be 5 years. Can you believe that? It'll be 5 years in November, but we're still getting accolades from his death. And so I'm so grateful that God allows those moments in time for us to say his name and to remember that he walked this way. And so if you've lost somebody, make sure, especially like earlier when you're talking about, you know, special days, like I have my I guess it'll be my 37th wedding anniversary in July. I will celebrate because he lived, he laughed, and he loved me. God bless him. And so we will celebrate. And so I encourage anyone, when you have those days, birthdays and holidays or whatever, please celebrate the individual, because what that does is it allows us to channel our grief in a different way.
Right.
Don't you agree?
I agree.
Okay. So do you feel, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm going to the wrong thing. Do you usually feel restless or in high gear? Oh my God, he's a banker, so he's always in high gear. You know, if you know a CFO, you know it. And so anyway, do you usually feel restless or in high gear? Do you feel that the need to be constantly busy? And is that beyond normal for you?
No, if you check my pulse, like you said, I'm always in high gear. But the one thing that my daughter's death did teach me is live each moment as if it's your last, because it very well could be. And so just being high strung and very rigid, always on, it has taught me to actually just relax a whole lot. And then with my therapist sitting next to me, that's at the end of the phone every time I need counseling or to reel me back off the ledge. Everything, I don't find myself being busy or busying myself. I just live in the moment now.
Okay.
All right. And are you afraid of becoming close to new people for fear of death again?
I'm not afraid of becoming close to new people. I'm, if anything, I love a little harder. And I'm a little more welcoming, because tomorrow's not promised to any of us. And so I try to be very inviting. Now, look, I want to park there too, though, because I'm not looking for no man.
Right. Say that again.
I'm not looking for a man.
Thank you. That's in honor of my cousin right there.
And so, but I say that because, you know, Arthur, you know, we'll find that, you know, sometimes you're being friendly to people, and then they don't see you as a counselor or a minister or whatever. They start getting romantic vibes. Mm-hmm. And so I have to always make sure I preface that with, I'm trying to help you. Right. And I'm trying to help you be the best you can be in Jesus Christ. Sure. But I am not ready for a date or anything like that. So I have to make sure that, you know, you have to honor the God in me and not really focus on the shell. Does that make sense? Right. Okay. So do you find yourself, Arthur, are you enjoying this?
I'm enjoying this. This is good. This is good.
Okay, good. Okay. Good. Okay. So do you find yourself acting in ways that may prove harmful to you over time, like such as drinking or using prescription drugs, non-prescription drugs, and some people even use sex that's unsafe, and driving unsafe, or living in a reckless manner? Have you ever found yourself doing that since your daughter died?
No, I will say this about grief. For all of those with low pain tolerances, you develop a high threshold of pain when you experience death, and particularly a child. And so I'm very squeamish when it comes to needles and all of this, but this pain I carry and have carried for a long while, it has really given me a high level of acceptance of the pain. And so I do find myself doing my greatest ministry in pain. And so, but as for the other, no prescription drugs or sexual activity or promiscuity or anything like that.
But that's not abnormal though, is it?
No.
No, I'm not saying for you. I'm just saying it's not abnormal for people to experience that.
No, people can experience that and be very careless and in their actions and behavior. And again, that's part of the mental process that, we as a race, we're afraid to talk about, particularly when death is, at the forefront of our psyche, that we can go into a psychosis and do things that we normally don't do. And so, and it's okay to be crazy in a moment, but you're not crazy.
Good. Okay,
so let's see where we are. All righty. Okay, so are you taking on too much responsibility for surviving family members? Yes.
You can't answer my questions.
Okay. Members or close friends, has your concern and compassion turned into obsession and caretaking? I don't think, okay, I'm not going to answer the question for you, but I can.
Well, you know what? I think when someone passes away, I think it's a normal reaction to kind of deflect, and start making sure that everybody else, like I said, is okay. And so I'm just a nurturer by nature. Mm-hmm. And so I try to make sure that, everyone around me is okay. And we do ourselves a disservice because we got to start focusing on self-care too.
Yes.
Because if you don't rest, if you don't eat right, that starts causing health problems. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I have to be very careful to put Gwen at the top of the list because I'm a fixer. You know what I mean? And I'm like, and then the things that I can suggest that you do to fix it, then I recommend Jesus.
Right.
And I recommend him over and over again. And so I think we just have to be mindful to insert self-care in there. Okay, so your question, Mr. Scribner. Are you experiencing only a few of the reactions or emotions that usually come with grief? Are you unable to express your thoughts or feelings? Oh my God, I can answer that. About your loved ones or his or her death? And do you remember only certain aspects of your relationship with your loved one? Or do you remember them in totality?
No, I remember in totality. I mean, even on the day of the death, I can remember everything that happened that day as if it was yesterday. And so I think that, with the emotions, yes, as we went through the stages of grief, all of those are emotion based. And so you can find yourself in any given phase at any given time. And so I can go from anger, because yes, sometimes I do get angry at the fact that she's no longer here. And then I can go to acceptance and feel this sense of, just being all right. Not that I'm okay, but I can be all right in that moment. And then I may go back to just being angry and bargaining. And so I think that where I am and in this process is I'm in a healthy space.
Yeah. Well, and if I can say this, when Alan passed, I kind of just really had to have a really good talk with God. Mm-hmm. Because I felt like we had been praying for everybody. We had been, doing God's will. And how could he die? You know what I mean? How could he die? I mean, and so here was my question. And so I hope people aren't too super religious, but here's my question for God. And that was, where were you? Mm-hmm. Where were you when Alan needed you most? And I'm forgetting that 8 years prior, he was supposed to die by doctor standards and God extended his life.
Right.
I was forgetting that. But then I asked God, where were you? And he gently whispered, I can hear it like yesterday. I was in the same place I was when my son was on the cross. Mm-hmm. There are some things that must happen for me to get my glory. Now, you don't have to like it and you don't have to, understand it, but I'm going to get my glory. And so we've got to remember that when people pass and when things happen in our life that are unexpectedly, this is God's will. You know what I mean? And so we don't have to always understand his will, but we always know that he understands and he is yet in control. And that gives you a certain peace, doesn't it?
It does.
It really does. Okay.
Okay. is there some aspect of what you're experiencing that makes you wonder about whether you are normal or going crazy? And do you feel stuck in your grief in some way, unable to move on, even though it's been quite a while since Alan's death?
Well, I would say this. There are days that I feel crazier because, because crazy is relative, is it not?
Right.
And so what's crazy to me may not be crazy to you.
Right.
And so, but I tell you what, I think when Alan initially died, I was unstable, if you will, and unstable in the way of, things just didn't feel the same. Like I found myself not really being hungry, not being, being able to eat or sleep either. You know what I mean? And you lose that passion for life. And so I thank God for giving me the passion back, and that's what grief relief was birthed, because there had to be more. And when I went to a grief relief session, the facilitator asked this question, Arthur. He said, how many of you love your loved one? And so of course, everybody in there, raised their hand. And he said, how many of you are missing them, like crazy? Well, of course, we all raise our hand. And he said, I have good news for you. He said, if you're grieving deeply, that means you love deeply.
Mm.
He said, so I honor the love that you had for your loved one. He said, because there are some people that a person will pass on, he said, and they have the funeral and they move on. He said, but there are others who are paralyzed with the grief. Can I tell y'all, that blessed me, because I was like, well, then I'm not crazy.
Right.
And so that means that what I'm feeling is normal and I can go through it. And so I do not want anyone to feel like, when people, Kevin and I said we could write a book about the crazy things people say when someone dies. And so people have said stuff to me like, it's been several years. When you gonna stop posting about him?
Or preaching about him?
Or when you gonna, every time you preach a sermon, you mention your husband. Well, my rebuttal is this: when you gonna stop talking about your mama or your daddy or your sister or your brother who died? When someone is an integral part of your life, then you're going to talk about what you know. And so he was a part. I was with him longer than I was with my own mother. And I loved her, God bless her soul. And so my thing is this: I'm going to talk about him often. But see, there are certain things that you can do. You can lose my number, or you can stop me. You know what I mean? Or you can just ignore when I talk about him, because I require on this grief journey that people remember why I'm grieving. And so COVID has really changed our life, because y'all, tomorrow is not promised to any of us. So we have got to be intentional with everything that we do. If you love somebody, say you love.
Right.
If you're not in a job you don't, if you're in a job you don't like, find something you like. Because tomorrow is not promised to any of us. And we have got to start remembering that in everything we do or say. Don't you agree?
I agree.
Okay.
And the one, let me just piggyback off this also. Gwen was talking about, what the counselor said, but also it's the price that she paid for having love.
Yes.
And so,
it's the currency.
It is. It's an exchange. Yes, you grieve, and so sometimes we can grieve and not. And for those who don't, then they really didn't pay the price to have love. And I would really hate to be in that situation where you can bury someone, move on, go business as usual, because you really didn't pay the price to have love.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. So what would you say to someone who's lost one? Would you admonish them to get grief counseling?
I think it's very necessary in this day and time, and we can have someone that transition, and we think that we're strong enough to go through it, and then you really don't realize until you're several weeks and months in, to where you may start lashing out at your children, or your children may start lashing out at you, and you don't really understand the phenomena that's going on. And so I think that with every death, people need to consider some type of counseling, even if just for a little while.
Aftercare.
Aftercare, yes.
Aftercare. Okay.
All right. So, is grief counseling enough?
For some people, but we also admonish people to get professional counseling because there are certain aspects of the journey that you need to work through.
Mhm.
You know, you got to process, especially if it's a sudden death versus the person has been sick for a while or whatever, and just death in general. You know, a lot of us carry a lot of baggage that we shouldn't be told.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And so you can't even deal with the death because of things that are associated with it. You know, death, like I said, is disrespectful. So it causes people to fight,
Yes.
you know, and you know where I found out that the fighting that it comes from, you can't fight God about the decision.
Right.
Okay.
The person's still gone. And so what you do is start fighting what's tangible. And that's your other loved ones, when it really isn't that you have a problem with them. It's just that you don't know how to process this grief.
Mhm.
Don't you agree?
I agree.
Okay.
And so let me just say this, and usually at the beginning of us working through grief, you know, we oftentimes find it safer to talk about, you know, their grief and anger in a private setting. And so, you know, if you don't feel that you can go to group therapy, because usually the settings are in a group format. But if you feel like you need that private, that one-on-one, then I do advise seeking professional help or seeking, you know, the grief relief organization, and let us handhold you through this process, because that's what we're here for. We want to see everybody in a healthy headspace. And so, you know, we just ask that, you know, hey, consider yourself, make yourself a priority. And then, you know, also find a safe place to cry and sort out all of the guilty feelings and everything that you may be feeling, the confusion and the regrets. And I remember when I was making my daughter's arrangements, and the one thing that the lady, the funeral home director, she asked me, she said, "Why are you crying?" And I'm like, that is an asinine question. Why am I crying? Do you know? And so she made a very profound statement. She said, you need to learn to cry with purpose. And so don't just cry to be crying, but cry with purpose. And so, and realize this is the last act of love that you can give to your daughter. And so that just blew my mind. I was like, cry with purpose. This is the last act of love I can give to my daughter. So I said, okay, so, you know, am I supposed to now give this dignified cry, or, you know, but no, really realize and understand the life that she lived, and know why I'm crying. And so that really did help me in that moment.
So we're gonna close with some coping tools, but I just want everyone to remember this, and that is, keep in mind with any loss or a catastrophic event, it can produce feelings of sadness, hopelessness, and confusion. But grief relief can guide you through painful periods so that you can regain your feelings of joy and the momentum in your life. And so there are two things that can happen on a grief journey, and that is, you can choose to be sad or you can choose joy.
Mm.
And I don't think any of us have ever thought about it's a choice. I can choose to be sad every day and walk around crying, or I can choose to remember that this is the day that the Lord has made. And I will rejoice and be glad what? In it. Okay. In it. We're not going to go to church, but you understand. And so anyway, we'll start. We have 8 coping tools, and Arthur, we will be really quick. And so if anyone has any questions for you, for us, that you want to tell us, that's fine.
Okay.
So our first coping tool would be recognize that there are no easy steps to grieving. There's no stages you can go through, any methods that are going to help you get over grief. You will never get over grief. You are going to have to learn to live with the pain.
Yes.
And God will give us the grace to do that. Okay.
He will allow you to mature in that pain, and recognize that life will never be exactly the same. You know, and often we want to go through this life-changing event, and then we expect life to be the same. You will never be the same, and life as you know and knew it will never be the same.
And then the third thing is train your brain, your body, and heart to tolerate pain. That comes with you identifying coping skills, being realistic, and then just going with it. Sometimes, you know, you just gotta say, like, you know, if you're gonna have a shot or something, you know it's gonna hurt. And just go with it, and in a minute, what happens? It'll it's all over with. So just learn that coping tool.
And then learn from the tough stuff. Throw away the bad stuff and hold on to the good.
Yes, yes. Okay, and then our fifth is keep living life and do it what? One day at a time. Just one day at a time. You know, if I put a pie in front of me, it can look like a whole lot for one person to eat. But boy, can I eat it if I take it more one slice at a time. Yes. And so I admonish you to just keep living life and do it one day at a time. You don't need grace for tomorrow. You don't need grace for yesterday. You just need grace for what? Right. Today, now. Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then let people help you. And so don't try to go it alone. And that's some of our issues. In most cases, we try to go it alone, and we think that we're going to be okay. But it's okay not to be okay.
Yes. And you know, that's what we've been saying. You know, with all this stuff going on, you know, in the news and everything, where all we hear is negative news. Then you know, it's okay to say I'm not okay. Mm-hmm. That's good. Okay. So our seventh tool is find ways to keep your loved one in your life. You don't have to bury them at the grave. That's okay. Right. And so you do that by thoughts and memories, speaking about them, allowing their memory to guide actions, tell funny stories about them, and make sure that you're participating in the memory of their life.
Yes. Put their name in the atmosphere.
Yes.
And then number 8, final one is repeat all of steps 1 through 7 indefinitely.
Indefinitely.
Start over.
Yes, start over.
Start over.
Start over. Mm-hmm. Just like you can go through the stages of grief. Just start over.
Start over.
So okay. It's a never-ending recovery. Thank you all very much. Very powerful presentation. So let me ask you, so you're saying basically it's a never-ending process of constantly going through the stages, going through all the different phases, and using some of those coping tools to help you make it through.
That's it. I mean,
there's no magic pill.
You will never finish grieving. You will never. Okay. No, as long as your heart beats, you're gonna be grieving.
That's right.
Okay. You're gonna grieve, and I know that's probably not correct grammar, but you understand. Mm-hmm. And so you will.
Yes, and also. I know Gwen has your contact information, and we sent out these last time to our Griefly participants. And so we will send them to you so that you can disseminate to all applicable persons on here. And so we would like for them to just have these tools to take away. We always try to leave them with something tangible.
Now, if they want to get in touch with your Grief Relief Ministry, is there a way? I know you have a Facebook page or some way they can contact you all?
Yes, so they can reach either of us, with our phones, via phone, and then they can also reach out to us on Facebook. Okay,
and what I'll do is I'll put your contact information in the group. Now, my daughter Ariel is actually in the chat on the live, so I don't know if they have any questions. If so, Ariel, text those questions over to me. Sandra, Kat, Mama, did you all have any questions?
Well, I was going to ask one, and this was wonderful. It, like you said, it resonates on so many different levels. What would be your advice quickly as it relates to children? You know, I think about as a child what this time might feel like, and children really, like you said, grieving what they thought life was, having no vision of future because they've not lived as long as all of us. So they just think life has just changed now, and now it's going to be like this. But you know, what do you say that we could pass on to children? I'm talking about everybody from 2 years old to 18-year-olds, the seniors who grieve not having a prom, not having a graduation. How can you relate to that?
Well, I think that in this current environment, everybody, they have grief work and they need the opportunity to talk about their feelings. So many times we say that children are resilient, they will bounce back, they will be okay. But if we don't ever allow them to talk about what they're feeling, and then we do them a disservice by suppressing those very feelings. And so we have to allow them to talk about it. And because, you know, to them, that prom, that's their world. To them, graduation, that's their world. Of course, we as adults, we know that the world is bigger than a graduation or a prom. But to them, it's life. And so we want to give them the opportunity to speak to their own personal worlds.
And you know what, Sandra, my grandson, he would have graduated. This is his year to graduate. And so he was kind of disheartened by that. So we had to kind of create, you know, a celebration for him. You know, we did like the drive-by parade and everything, and that really blessed him. But I'll tell you this, my 13-year-old grandson said this, and it made so much sense. My daughter had them sitting down and was talking to them about how they felt as being, you know, Black men in this environment and what was going on. And Blake, we call him the professor. And Blake said, he said, when I think about it, he said, I'm not really afraid for myself as much as I am for my dad and my brother. He said, because they are big in stature. He said, be intimidating to a lot of people. He said, so I encourage myself by believing that it's got to get better. It can't be like this always. He says, so I'm holding on to hope. And I think how amazing is that for a child to say, I'm holding on to hope. And so I think that's it. We have to encourage them, be they from 2 to 22. We have to encourage them that, you know, it's a mindset. It's a mindset. And so here's why I say, even if God don't change the situation, if he changes the way we look at the situation, what a blessing. So we just have to remind them to hold on to hope.
Okay. All right.
And you're right. That's been so helpful. My mom's pulling that. It's like you said, I'm relating it to what's happening with this pandemic and all that. And you know, obviously at the beginning, very similar to the levels you all said, we were in denial. We thought, you know, this can't be happening. This is not.
Right.
But then, you know, and then you're waiting on it to end. And as the weeks start to turn into, you know, months, and every holiday that you thought you couldn't possibly still be in here, you're still here.
Right.
You start having to say, okay, what are we going to, let's just move past this.
Yes.
We got to just start living now. We got to just go ahead and live and accept it.
In the group.
Yeah. But I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, Gwen, thank you so very much. You and we just appreciate the ministry. We appreciate you and your partner here helping us to kind of wrap our minds around how we can get over the grief. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I want you to end us in one of your highly anointed, powerful exhortations.
Okay.
So you are the keynote graduating speaker here at the end.
Okay. Come on, Jesus. Come on, Jesus.
So I need you right now to send us out with power, authority to go and wreak havoc on the plans of the enemy.
Come on, Jesus. Okay, well, I'll just go back to the way my grandma Maylou Holmes used to say it. Now let us have a little talk with Jesus. Let us tell him all about our trouble. He will hear our earnest cry, and he will answer by and by. And when you feel that little prayer wheel turning, then you'll know a little fire is burning. You see, let's just a little talk with Jesus. It makes it right. Let us pray. Father God, as once again we come to your throne of grace and mercy. God, before we ask you for anything, we sure want to thank you for everything. Yes. God, you've been good to us, oh God. In the midst of this pandemic, oh God, when so many other people have gone on, God, you've spared our life. And for that, God, we just want to say thank you. God, we thank you for houses to live in. We thank you for cars to drive. And God, even for those that are walking, God, we thank you for the ability of our limbs, oh God. God, you've been good to us, oh God. And so, God, on this grief journey, oh God, we say equip us for battle, oh God. God, remind us, oh God, that when we're born, there's a time appointed to die. But God, oh, what a blessing it is to die in Christ. Yes. And so, God, we thank you for that, oh God. Now, God, we thank you for ministry, oh God. We thank you for the ability to lay down our pain, oh God, and focus on somebody else, oh God. We thank you for being our brother and our sister's keeper, oh God. Now, God, in the days and months to come, oh God, as this pandemic looms, oh God, as racial division abides, oh God, would you be our peace, oh God? Will you be our hope, oh God? Will you help us to stay focused on you, oh God? Because the answer is all in you, oh God. You said many are the afflictions of the righteous, oh God, but you will deliver us out of them all, not some, but all. And so, God, we standing on all because you are the great I am that I am. And since you are in control, oh God, we say do what you do best, and that's take care of your children, oh God. Yes. God, we say that no weapon formed against us shall prosper. Now we realize that weapons are formed. We realize that we're seeing our brothers and sisters die for no reason, oh God. But we also know that, God, there's purpose in the pain. And so, God, remind us, oh God, to focus on the purpose, oh God, as you help us to endure the pain. God, we thank you for this opportunity, oh God, to lay all our trouble at your feet, oh God. And we lay them at your feet. You know why? Because you can handle it, God. Yeah. So I say, handle it, Jesus, like only you can. God, we thank you for this opportunity to call on your name, oh God. And everybody who is participating in this session, oh God, will you give them a double blessing, oh God? Yes. We don't know what they stand in need of, oh God, but you know. And so, God, since you know, oh God, we say touch every home, oh God. Touch every heart, oh God. Touch every mind, oh God. Encourage them in the midnight hour. Catch every tear, oh God, and remind them that their hope is in you. Yes. God, we thank you. We praise you. We serve you. We love you. And God, we say a double blessing on Arthur's ministry, oh God. Yes. Thank you for giving him the insight, oh God, and the desire, oh God, to help the people of God. And so, God, we say greater kingdom, greater blessings, and all we stand on is the word of greater. These and many other blessings we ask in your darling son, Jesus' name. And they all said, amen. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Gwen. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Scribner, as well for your time. And I will pass your information on to everybody. And I look forward to working with you all in the future as well. So thanks a lot. Thanks for everybody that attended on the live. Thanks for everybody that participated in the 5-day challenge. And we will be staying connected, and we will continue to come out of this stronger, come out of this with victory, informed and dangerous. So thanks again, Gwen and Mr. Scribner. Sandra, Mama, I will see you all later.
Bye, y'all.
Facebook Live. We love you all, and we will see you all later. Bye-bye.
All right. God bless.
God bless.
God bless. Yeah.